Many high-profile trials have captivated the public imagination, but have you ever heard of a dead man being put on trial? Well, this one may surprise you. During the Dark Ages, after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Europe was in turmoil. Threats existed from Muslims invading from Spain, Norse Vikings invading northern Europe, and along with Moors, raiding along the Mediterranean Sea, with Christian kings and nobles fighting each other over territory. And the Christian church was divided between the Catholics in Rome and the Orthodox Greek Christians in Constantinople. Politics at this time were brutal and unforgiving. Much was done in the name of God that was only to benefit the desires of men, and some were popes. Wars had raged for centuries, and powerful families bought and sold political and even religious offices to obtain and maintain political power at the expense of others. By the 9th century, it was already a volatile period, and the power of the Pope was just about the only thing keeping rulers in line due to the threats of excommunication for themselves and their subjects. In 897 AD, the Catholic Church, already steeped in medieval politics and power plays, staged one of the most grotesque spectacles in history. What was the Cadaver Synod? Why did it occur? Who was behind it? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. During the medieval period, the papacy held ultimate authority, and in order to try and rein in the warring nobles of Europe, the position of Holy Roman Emperor was established with the crowning of Charlemagne I on Christmas Day in the year 800. The Holy Roman Empire was anything but holy or stable. The hope was that the emperor would be the intermediary between the rulers of European kingdoms and the papacy, with the emperor having the full backing of the church and its allies. But the rivalry between bishops, cardinals, and even popes would become legendary, and one former pope would be made an example of, and the man on trial was Pope Formosus, who had been dead for about 9 months. Pope Formosus reigned from 891 to 896, at a time when the church was not just a religious authority, but a political battlefield. Italy was fragmented into various kingdoms, and the papacy was the ultimate prize for rival noble families and even foreign kings. Formosus, a capable bishop and diplomat, had made enemies, but one would prove to be somewhat deranged. Following the death of Formosus, Stephen VI, his successor, a bitter rival supported by a powerful Roman political faction, was elected to the papacy in a blaze of vengeance. Formosus had been a powerful advocate for those Italian and other European noble families, especially the peasantry who were neglected by the papacy for centuries, and some called him the Pope for the common man. Technically, popes were not to interfere in the business of kings and other nobles in their dealing with their people, regardless of how ruthless they had been in handling the peasants or rival nobles. But Formosus opposed the rich families taking power, and one example was Guido, Duke of Spoleto, who was crowned King of Italy in 889 and Holy Roman Emperor in 891, serving until his death on December 12, 894. The new Pope, Stephen VI, had been very involved with the meteoric rise of the Spoleto family and others, which Formosus opposed, and upon being elected in 896, Stephen also had enemies, namely those noble families, but the vast majority of commoners who owed their allegiance to his late predecessor, and Stephen represented the wealthiest families in Milan, Spoleto, Genoa, Naples, and Florence, whose family members he helped into high church office. Formosus' enemies still wanted vengeance, and Pope Stephen decided to do the unthinkable, and that's when things got morbid and shook the foundations of the church for centuries. He held a trial without mercy against a pope without breath. The Vatican Council was called to assemble in the Basilica of St. John Lateran in Rome in early January 897. The bishops and cardinals were to stand as jurors in a trial that defied logic. The rotting corpse of Formosus was dug up from its grave, dressed in full papal regalia, and placed on a throne in full view. Pope Stephen VI himself stood, addressed the court, and read the list of charges against the corpse. In fairness to the corpse, a deacon or legal advocate was appointed to speak for the corpse, while Stephen, overcome with rage, screamed accusations at his long-dead rival. The dead Formosus was charged with perjury, violating canon law, and illegally being pope to appease Stephen's wealthy benefactors and reverse the policies Formosus had implemented that would benefit his friends. What follows were real reasons for such a cruel act by his vengeful enemies. One of the detailed charges was when he had served as the Bishop of Porto, a position he retained even after becoming pope. This duality of holding both offices was cited in the charges against him. According to church law, a bishop was forbidden from overseeing more than one diocese at a time, but when Formosus was elected pope, that bishopric had yet to be filled with a qualified candidate, although the rich allies of Stephen tried to buy their way into that office, which Formosus blocked. Formosus had always opposed the wealthy controlling the church, instead believing that the common man had as solid a claim to church office as did the rich, which made him a target for Stephen's wealthy allies. Formosus opposed the selling of indulgences and the wealthy nobles paying off cardinals to get their man appointed as a bishop or cardinal, let alone elected as pope. Formosus was also seen as a unifier, bridging the gap between the Roman Catholic Church and the Greek Orthodox Church following the Photian Schism from 863 to 867. This was when Khan Boris I, the Bulgarian ruler, created a theological rivalry between Rome and Constantinople over which church the new Christian kingdom of Bulgaria would fall under, which launched the tenuous relationship between the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches. There were also differing views on papal authority, called the Filioque Clause, and even minor things like whether priests should have beards contributed to a growing sense of separation, the interpretation of the liturgy notwithstanding. Formosus had discussed uniting Christendom with the very wealthy Italian merchant families who were opposed due to the taxes and tariffs they imposed upon Greek merchants. Many cardinals and bishops also opposed this maneuver due to the differences in scriptural liturgy between the Greek and Latin churches. Formosus had entangled himself in imperial, financial, and spiritual politics, especially when he backed the Carolingian ruler Arnulf of Carinthia in his bid to claim the title of Holy Roman Emperor over another contender, Lambert of Spoleto, whose family still wielded great wealth and power and were allies of Stephen. It was less a trial than a public ritual humiliation, and the dead Formosus was found guilty of all charges, and his edicts and ordinations were annulled. His papacy was ruled invalid, especially his appointment of bishops, many from poor families who believed the way he did and were loyal to his cause. Abolishing those appointments allowed Stephen to appoint his own replacements, allowing his friends to hold office and reinforce his own power and the influence he had, especially by using the Spoletan faction as his allies. After the verdict, the body of Formosus was stripped of all of its papal vestments and was mutilated, with the 3 fingers of benediction cut off and dumped into the Tiber River. Pope Stephen may not have thought through his actions, as Formosus was quite popular among the common people in Europe, especially in Italy, as he had advocated for their fair treatment. The church was now seen as corrupt, immoral, and was caught in a nightmare of its own making. This bizarre and politically charged trial is often cited as one of the most infamous episodes in church history. The corpse was recovered by loyal monks and quietly reburied in a more dignified place, but Stephen had new problems. The grotesque spectacle horrified the Roman people. Riots broke out. Even nobles who were loyal to Stephen were appalled at the sacrilege, and they had Pope Stephen VI arrested and imprisoned. Stephen was also charged with blasphemy, heresy, and conduct against God, and was awaiting his own trial, but he never made it to court, as he was assassinated, strangled to death in his cell later that same year in August 897. This event only increased tensions, since the papacy was always contested by noble families local Roman aristocracy, and foreign rulers, all hoping to gain influence over the church. Even Formosus's opponents were reviled by the despicable act, and they saw the true nature of Stephen, which was anything but Christian-like. It also marked a swift reversal of fortunes for the Spalatin families, as the political tide turned against them. The spectacle of the macabre show trial exposed the depths of moral decay and political rot inside the church, and it became a chilling reminder of how power corrupts, even in death. The leading nobles of Europe began to question the church's authority, which had reigned supreme since the 5th century. Pope Theodore II briefly succeeded Stephen VI and annulled the decisions made during the Cadaver Synod, and had Formosus's body retrieved and reburied in St. Peter's Basilica, which assisted in restoring Formosus's legacy and healing the rift within the church caused by the trial. Pope John IX succeeded Theodore II after his death in 898, and he took additional steps to prevent such trials in the future. The trial of Formosus and any other dead persons were banned and proclaimed to be heretical acts, which began to repair some of the damage and rehabilitate the church's image. But the intended effect was to try and repair the image and reputation of the church proper, and not just for the clergy, but also for the nobility and the common people, as unrest and rebellion were always a possibility. Without the fear of church retribution and the threat of excommunication, many rulers and their people had no reason not to embark upon warfare and mayhem, which threatened the hegemony of Europe, and remained so for many centuries afterward. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.